My name is Olivia Blackwood, and I always thought my family's wealth came from generations of smart real estate investments. That's what the plaque in our mansion's foyer proclaimed. Blackwood Properties, established 1892. That's what my parents told me at every family dinner. That's what everyone in our affluent circle believed. But they were all wrong. The truth began to unravel the day I decided to renovate our family mansion. At 32, I had finally convinced my parents to let me modernize the aging Victorian estate. They agreed reluctantly, with one strange condition: the basement was strictly off limits. The foundation is delicate, my mother insisted, her usually confident voice wavering slightly. Any disturbance could compromise the entire structure. I should have noticed how her hands trembled when she said this, how my father's face turned ashen at the mere mention of renovation. But I was too excited about finally bringing the mansion into the 21st century to pay attention to these warning signs. The first few weeks of renovation went smoothly. We updated the kitchen, restored the grand staircase, and modernized the electrical systems. Everything was going according to plan until Marcus, my lead contractor, discovered something odd behind the wine cellar walls. "Miss Blackwood," he called one afternoon, his voice echoing through the empty halls. "You might want to see this." I followed him down to the wine cellar, where his team had been installing new temperature control systems. They had removed some of the old wooden panels, revealing something that made my blood run cold: a door. Not just any door, but a heavy iron door with an intricate locking mechanism, carefully hidden behind decades of careful carpentry. "This isn't on any of the building plans," Marcus said, shining his flashlight on the rusted hinges. "And look at this craftsmanship. This was built to last, to keep something in or out." I reached out to touch the cold metal, my fingers tracing the elaborate engravings on its surface. They formed a pattern I recognized, the same pattern that appeared on my great-grandfather's signet ring, the one my father still wore every day. "Can you open it?" I asked, my curiosity overshadowing the echo of my mother's warnings. Marcus examined the lock. "It's old, but not complicated. Give me a few minutes." The sound of his tools working on the lock seemed to grow louder in the confined space. Each click and scrape sent shivers down my spine. Finally, with a loud groan, the door swung open. The beam of Marcus's flashlight revealed a narrow corridor stretching into darkness. The air that rushed out was stale, carrying with it the musty smell of secrets long buried. "I'll go first," I said, taking the flashlight from Marcus's hand. "Wait here." The corridor was longer than I expected, its walls lined with shelves holding leather-bound ledgers and stacked papers. At the end stood a massive oak desk, its surface covered in dust, except for one spot, a fresh handprint. Someone had been here recently. My hands trembling, I picked up the nearest ledger. Its pages were filled with neat columns of numbers and names, dates stretching back to the 1890s. As I read, my eyes widened in horror. These weren't real estate transactions. They were something else entirely. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. Before I could turn, a familiar voice spoke. "I told you not to come down here, Olivia." I spun around to face my father, barely recognizing the man illuminated by my flashlight. His usually warm eyes were cold, his face set in grim determination. In his hand, he clutched a small key, the same key I had seen him wearing on a chain around his neck since I was a child. "Dad," I whispered, clutching the ledger to my chest. "What is all this?" He stepped forward, his shadow looming large on the corridor walls. "Put the book down, Olivia. Some secrets should stay buried." But it was too late. I had already seen enough to understand that everything I knew about my family was a lie. The Blackwood fortune wasn't built on real estate at all. It was built on something much darker, something that explained why certain families in our city had mysteriously disappeared over the years, why our basement was always off limits, and why my great-grandfather's portrait seemed to watch us with such sinister satisfaction. I took a step back, bumping into the old desk. "Dad, these records, these names. You don't understand," he said, advancing slowly. "Everything we did for the family, for our legacy." Behind him, I heard more footsteps. My mother appeared in the doorway, her face pale in the dim light. "Harrison," she called to my father, her voice urgent. "She needs to know. It's time." My father stopped, his shoulders sagging slightly. "She's not ready." "I wasn't ready either," my mother replied. "But the legacy must continue. And now that she's found this place," she gestured to the room full of dark secrets, "she needs to understand her inheritance." I looked between them, these people I thought I knew so well, suddenly strangers in the shadows of our family's true history. The ledger in my hands felt heavy with the weight of generations of secrets. And as my parents began to tell me the truth about the Blackwood legacy, I realized that the renovation of our old mansion had uncovered more than just hidden rooms and forgotten doorways. It had uncovered the dark foundation upon which our entire family fortune was built, a foundation that would soon force me to make an impossible choice between preserving my family's legacy and saving my own soul. The basement air grew colder as my parents led me deeper into the hidden corridor. My father's signet ring gleamed in the flashlight beam as he pulled out another leather-bound book from the shelves. "The Blackwood legacy began in 1892, he started, his voice taking on a tone I'd never heard before. "Your great-grandfather, Edmund Blackwood, wasn't just a real estate developer. He was what you might call a collector of debts." He opened the book, revealing pages of names, dates, and amounts. But these weren't ordinary loans. Each entry ended with the same chilling note: property acquired through complete forfeiture. "I don't understand," I said, though a horrible suspicion was beginning to form. My mother's hand touched my shoulder. "Edmund discovered something powerful during the economic crisis of the 1890s. People would do anything to save their homes, their businesses, their families. Anything." My voice trembled. "He offered them contracts," my father continued. "Magical contracts, bound by blood and ancient rituals. They would receive whatever they desperately needed: money, power, success. In return, they pledged something far more valuable than mere property: their souls." I whispered, the words feeling ridiculous even as they left my mouth. But my parents didn't laugh. "Not exactly," my mother said. "Their fate, their future, everything they could or would become. When the contract came due, they simply disappeared. Their properties, their wealth, everything transferred to the Blackwood family." I stared at the ledger, understanding now why certain names seemed familiar. They were prominent families who had mysteriously vanished over the years, their disappearances written off as accidents or unexplained tragedies. "The contracts," my father explained, "were designed by Edmund using knowledge he gained from certain entities, beings that exist in the spaces between what's real and what's not. They ensure the terms are met, one way or another." My mother pulled out another book, this one newer. The business evolved over time. We became more selective, more discreet. Instead of targeting desperate families, we focused on ambitious individuals, people who would trade anything for success. Like the Harritons last year. I remembered suddenly. They won the state lottery, became overnight millionaires. Then their private plane crashed 6 months later. They knew the terms, my father said coldly. 6 months of wealth and success, then complete forfeiture. Everything they gained, everything they were, became part of the Blackwood fortune. This is insane. I backed away from them. You're telling me our entire family fortune is built on stealing people's lives? Their futures? Building, my mother corrected. Present tense. The contracts are still active. In fact, she hesitated, glancing at my father. There's one being negotiated right now. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus, my contractor. Miss Blackwood, there's someone here to see you about the renovation budget. Says it's urgent. My blood ran cold. The renovation costs, I said slowly. They're higher than expected. You knew I'd need more funding. My father nodded. We arranged for someone to offer help. Someone desperate enough to sign a new contract. No, I shook my head. I won't be part of this. You already are, my mother said firmly. You're Blackwood. The legacy passes to you now. You must learn to manage the contracts to maintain the family business. And if I refuse, my father's expression darkened. You can't. The moment you entered this room, you became bound to the legacy. The entities that enforce our contracts. They're aware of you now. I looked around the room, suddenly feeling watched by something beyond the shadows. The air seemed to thicken, and in the corners of my vision, I caught glimpses of movement that shouldn't be possible. There's more, my mother added. The contracts require active management. If the Blackwood line fails to maintain them, she shuddered. Let's just say the entities would claim everything, including us. I sank into the old desk chair, my mind reeling. How many? I asked. How many active contracts are there? My father pulled out a modern laptop, incongruous in this ancient space. Currently, 47, each with different terms, different due dates. They need to be monitored, managed. New ones need to be created to maintain the balance. The contractor upstairs, I realized. He would be number 48. If you approve the contract, my mother nodded. It's your decision now. Your first test as the new keeper of the Blackwood legacy. My phone buzzed again. Marcus, Miss Blackwood? He's getting impatient. I stared at the message, understanding now that I stood at a crossroads. I could run, try to escape this dark inheritance, but my parents' warnings about the consequences rang in my ears. Or I could embrace it, become what generations of Blackwoods had been, collectors of fates, dealers in futures. Standing up, I straightened my jacket and took a deep breath. I need to see all the contracts, every detail. If I'm going to be responsible for this, I need to understand everything. My parents exchanged relieved looks. Of course, my father said, moving toward a modern filing cabinet hidden in the shadows. But first, you need to deal with the situation upstairs. I walked toward the door, then paused. Just tell me one thing. When you paid for my college education, for my first apartment, for everything, whose fate paid for it? The silence that followed was deafening. The Middletons, my mother finally answered. Remember them? The family that owned the bakery downtown. I did remember. They had vanished during my freshman year of college. Their bakery, their home, everything they owned had been mysteriously abandoned overnight. As I climbed the stairs back to the main house, each step felt heavier than the last. Upstairs, a desperate person waited, ready to trade their future for immediate success. and I had to decide whether to continue my family's dark legacy or find another way, if another way even existed. What I didn't know then was that my decision would set in motion a chain of events that would either secure the Blackwood fortune forever or destroy everything my family had built over the past century. I pushed open the basement door, stepping back into the world of light and normalcy. But now I understood. Our mansion wasn't just a symbol of wealth and success. It was a repository of stolen fates, a fortress built on disappeared lives. And I was its new keeper. Marcus waited in the grand foyer, standing next to a man I'd never seen before. The stranger wore an ill-fitting suit and clutched a worn briefcase. Samuel Thompson, according to the contract papers my father had slipped into my hand before I came upstairs. Miss Blackwood, Marcus nodded. Mr. Thompson here has an interesting proposition about funding the renovation. I studied Thompson carefully. Middle-aged, desperate eyes, wedding ring. A man with a family, with a future my family's legacy would erase. Let's talk in the study, I said, leading them away from the basement door. The study walls were lined with photographs, generations of Blackwoods standing proudly in front of their various properties. Now, I understood why none of the pictures included the previous owners. I understand you're having financial difficulties with the renovation, Thompson began, his voice trembling slightly. I represent certain investors who could help. I opened the contract my father had prepared. The terms were clear. Thompson would receive $5 million, enough to save his failing business and put his kids through college. In return, he and his entire family would forfeit their future existence in exactly 3 years. My hand shook as I placed the contract on the desk. One signature, and I would become just like my parents, like my grandfather, like all the Blackwoods before them, a collector of souls, a trader of fates. Mr. Thompson, I said slowly, before we discuss terms, I need to show you something. I led him back to the basement, ignoring my parents' shocked expressions when we entered the hidden room. Thompson's eyes widened as he took in the shelves of ledgers, the ancient desk, the feeling of otherworldly presence that permeated the space. What is this place? This, I said, pulling out the most recent ledger, is where we keep the real contracts. The ones that explain exactly what happens to people who make deals with my family. My father stepped forward. Olivia, stop this immediately. But I continued, showing Thompson the entries. The Harringtons, the Middletons, dozens of families who had vanished after signing away their futures. The money you're being offered isn't just money. It's lives, futures, stolen from people like you who were desperate enough to sign without understanding the true cost. The air in the room grew colder. In the corners of my vision, shadows moved in impossible ways. I felt them watching, waiting, those entities my father had mentioned. Olivia, my mother's voice was sharp with warning. You're endangering everything. No, I stood my ground. I'm ending everything. I turned to Thompson, who had gone pale. Go home to your family. Whatever trouble you're in, it's better than the alternative. Trust me. After Thompson flowed, I faced my parents. The ledgers began to vibrate on their shelves. Dark shapes coalesced in the shadows. Do you have any idea what you've done? My father's voice shook with rage and fear. The contracts must continue. The entities require regular tributes. Without new contracts, they'll take everything, my mother finished, including us. It's how the original deal was structured. The entities get everything if the Blackwood line fails to maintain the cycle. I picked up the oldest ledger, my great-grandfather's first record of deals and forfeitures. Then let them take it. The shadows in the room solidified into forms that hurt my eyes to look at. The temperature dropped to freezing. I found something else in these records, I continued, opening the book to a marked page. A clause in the original agreement. The entities can be bound and banished if someone of Blackwood blood willingly sacrifices the entire fortune. Everything gained through the contracts, freely given up. My parents lunged forward, but it was too late. I had already begun the words written in the margin of that first ledger, my great-grandfather's contingency plan that no Blackwood had ever been willing to use. The entities swirled around us, their presence becoming more solid with each word I spoke. The fortune my family had accumulated over generations, properties, money, stolen futures, began to dissolve. I felt it leaving, my trust fund, my apartments, everything I owned that had been bought with Blackwood money. More importantly, I felt the contracts breaking. Somewhere, the Harritons were returning to existence. The Middletons were reclaiming their stolen futures. My parents screamed as their own wealth evaporated. The mansion itself began to fade, decades of stolen prosperity returning to their rightful owners. When it was over, we stood in an empty basement. No hidden room, no ancient desk, no ledgers full of dark contracts. Just concrete walls and the remnants of what had once been the Blackwood fortune. "What have you done?" my father whispered, looking at his empty hands. His signet ring had vanished with everything else. "I chose a different legacy," I answered. "One we can build ourselves without stealing other people's futures." My mother sank to the floor, her designer clothes replaced by simple garments. "We're nothing now." "No one." "No," I helped her up. "We're finally freed to be something real." Upstairs, Marcus and his renovation crew had vanished. The contract that brought them here no longer existed. The mansion was just a house now, old but ordinary. No more hidden rooms, no more dark secrets. I walked out the front door, where my car had been replaced by a modest used model, the last vestige of my previous life transformed into something honestly earned. The sun was setting over what had once been the Blackwood estate. Tomorrow, I would wake up just like everyone else, without wealth or privilege, but also without the weight of generations of stolen fates. I pulled out my phone and deleted the name Blackwood Properties from my contacts. It was time to build something new, something clean. As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The mansion seemed smaller now, just another old house with history, but no more dark secrets. The entities were gone, the contracts broken, the futures returned. The Blackwood legacy was over, but mine was just beginning. 10 years later, I stood in front of a different building, the headquarters of New Horizons Development, my new company, built from scratch, with honest work and legitimate contracts. No hidden rooms, no stolen futures. My parents eventually adapted to normal life. My father found work as a real estate agent, dealing in actual properties instead of supernatural contracts. My mother started a small interior design business. We weren't wealthy anymore, but we were real. Sometimes, late at night, I still dream about that hidden room and the entities that dwelled there. But then I wake up and look at what I've built, a life that's truly mine, a success that didn't cost anyone else their future. The plaque on my office wall reads, "Founded 2023, a new legacy, started by choice rather than inheritance." And in my desk drawer, I keep one thing from that old basement, a blank page from my great-grandfather's ledger, a reminder that sometimes the most valuable thing you can inherit is the chance to choose a different path. The Blackwood fortune may be gone, but in its place, something better grew, A family that finally learned the true meaning of building a legacy, one that doesn't require stealing someone else's future to secure your own. 3 generations of the Sullivan family had managed other people's money. My grandfather started our firm in 1962 with nothing but a desk, a telephone, and an unshakable belief in ethical investment practices. My father expanded it into Sullivan Wealth Management, serving some of Boston's most prestigious families. Then came my brother Michael and me, the twins who were supposed to carry the legacy forward together. Funny how together can mean such different things to different people. My name is Alexandra Sullivan, and until 6 months ago, I was the Chief Investment Officer of Sullivan Wealth Management, responsible for over $800 million in client assets. Now, according to my brother, I'm a disgraced former employee who mismanaged everything. The truth, as our clients are about to discover, is considerably more interesting. Miss Sullivan? My assistant Margaret's voice crackled through the intercom. The forensic accountant's report just arrived. I checked my watch. 7:15 a.m. Another early morning in the office, a habit I'd maintained even after Michael's attempted coup. Send him in. James Patterson from Deloitte had the careful demeanor of someone who'd spent decades uncovering financial fraud. He placed a thick folder on my desk. You were right, Miss Sullivan. The irregularities started exactly 18 months ago. I opened the folder, though I already knew what I'd find. 18 months ago, right when Michael had insisted on modernizing our trading platform. Right when he'd started pushing for more aggressive investment strategies. Show me the money flows, I said. Patterson pulled out a series of charts. It's clever. I'll give him that. Small amounts, carefully distributed through a network of shell companies. Most auditors would miss it. But when you know what to look for. I studied the diagrams, remembering the day I'd first noticed something odd in our trading reports. Michael had dismissed my concerns, calling me paranoid and stuck in the past. Old school due diligence is outdated, Lex, he'd said, using the childhood nickname I'd always hated. Modern wealth management requires modern methods. What he meant, I now knew, was that systematic fraud required systematic concealment. The total amount? I asked Patterson. $47.3 million diverted from client accounts over 18 months. The losses were masked by falsified returns reports. Your brother used the firm's strong reputation to prevent anyone from looking too closely. I nodded, thinking of our father, who died 2 years ago. His last words to us had been about trust, the trust our clients placed in us, the trust we needed to place in each other. Does anyone else know about this yet? Patterson shook his head. Just my team, working under strict confidentiality. Though I should mention, he hesitated, your brother's planning something big. My sources say he's announcing a merger next month. Sullivan Wealth Management is being acquired by Platinum Capital Partners. Of course, Michael needed a way to bury the evidence before anyone noticed. A merger would mean new systems, transferred accounts, conveniently lost records. Thank you, James. Your final report? We'll be ready for the SEC next week. Are you sure you want to do this? He's your brother. I looked at the photo on my desk. Michael and me at our college graduation, his arm around my shoulders, both of us grinning at the camera. 15 years ago, before money and power had revealed who he really was. He stopped being my brother the moment he betrayed our client's trust. After Patterson left, I reviewed the morning's trading reports. Michael had kept me on as a senior advisor, a ceremonial role meant to maintain client confidence during the transition. Little did he know, I'd spent the last 6 months building my case, documenting every irregular transaction, every falsified report. The intercom buzzed again. "Miss Sullivan, your brother's here." I quickly tucked the forensic report into my safe. "Send him in." Michael strode into my office like he owned it, which, technically, he now did. At 35, we still looked enough alike to give people pause. Same dark hair, same green eyes. But where I'd inherited our father's caution and integrity, Michael had developed a hunger for more. "Working early as usual, Lex? You know you don't have to anymore. Your advisory role is more flexible." I smiled blandly. "Old habits. What brings you by?" "The Hamilton Anniversary Gala next week. I want you there." The Hamilton family had been clients since our grandfather's time. Their annual charity gala was Boston's premier financial event. Of course, I wouldn't miss it. "Good." He perched on my desk, a habit he knew I hated. "I'll be making some announcements. Big changes coming. The merger with Platinum Capital will take us to the next level." "Fascinating. Will you be announcing this special investment vehicle too? The one you've been running through Cayman Islands accounts?" For a split second, Michael's mask slipped. Fear flickered in his eyes before his smooth confidence returned. "Still chasing conspiracy theories, sis? This is why you needed to step back. You're too caught up in details, missing the bigger picture." "Oh, I see the bigger picture perfectly, Michael. Every decimal point of it." He stood, straightening his custom-made suit. "Just be there next week. Smile, support the changes. It's not like you have a choice anymore." After he left, I opened my laptop and checked my encrypted email. The SEC's forensic team had been quietly investigating for months, ever since I'd submitted my detailed report. Their timing would be critical. My phone buzzed. A text from Diana Martinez, my oldest friend and the Hamilton family's private attorney. "Meeting today, 2 p.m. Bring everything." I glanced at the safe containing Patterson's report. Michael thought he was consolidating his power. Instead, he was walking into a trap 18 months in the making. The old Sullivan Wealth Management offices occupied a historic brownstone in Boston's financial district. As I walked through the trading floor, I noticed the changes Michael had made. Sleek digital displays showing real-time market data, young traders aggressively working phones, the family portraits replaced by modern art. In the elevator to the parking garage, I ran into Victor Thompson, our head of compliance, or what was left of compliance after Michael's modernization. "Ms. Sullivan," he said quietly, "I've been meaning to talk to you. Some of these new trading patterns—" "Not here, Victor." I handed him my card with a new phone number written on the back. "Call me tonight. Use this line only." He nodded, understanding, another piece falling into place. Diana's office was in a modern high-rise overlooking the harbor. She greeted me with a hug, then closed her door and activated her white noise generator, a necessary precaution in today's financial world. "How solid is your evidence?" she asked without preamble. I opened my briefcase and laid out Patterson's preliminary findings. 18 months of systematic fraud. 47 million diverted through shell companies. False returns reported to clients. And a merger plan designed to bury it all. Diana whistled softly. The Hamilton family's exposure? About 12 million. Michael used their accounts heavily because of their long-standing trust in our firm. Elizabeth Hamilton is going to be furious. Diana shook her head. She chairs 3 regulatory committees. If Michael knew, he doesn't. He thinks old money is quiet money. He forgets that quiet doesn't mean powerless. Diana studied me. The gala's next week. Your brother's planning to announce the merger there, along with my retirement. He wants to consolidate control before anyone looks too closely at the books. And the SEC? I allowed myself a small smile. Their audit team is ready. They're just waiting for the right moment. A room full of witnesses, Diana nodded, including the state's financial regulators, all the major players in Boston banking, and the press. Perfect. I gathered my documents. Michael always did have a flair for dramatic announcements. I'm just helping him make it memorable. Back in my office, I reviewed the final pieces of my plan. Michael had spent 18 months building his house of cards, thinking his sister was too naive, too trapped in old-fashioned methods to catch him. He forgot that our grandfather's most important lesson wasn't about making money. It was about protecting it. About maintaining the trust that 3 generations of Sullivans had built. As the sun set over Boston Harbor, I thought about the gala. Now just 7 days away. Michael would have his moment in the spotlight, his big announcement. And I would have mine. The week before the Hamilton Gala passed with excruciating slowness. I maintained my usual routine, arriving early, reviewing reports, meeting with select clients. Michael was too busy preparing for his triumph to notice that each meeting, each document review, was another piece of evidence being carefully preserved and documented. The SEC team is in position, Diana told me over a secure line. They've coordinated with the state regulators. Everything's ready. I was in my office, watching the sun rise over Boston Harbor. The same view our father had loved, though the skyline had changed. And the Hamilton family? Elizabeth knows something's coming. She's arranged the seating chart to put all the key players at the main table. Regulators, banking executives, major clients. Perfect. I checked my watch. The forensic accountant's final report. Delivered to the SEC yesterday. Your brother's going to regret not checking those Cayman accounts more carefully. A soft knock interrupted us. Miss Sullivan? Margaret entered, carrying a garment bag. Your gala dress arrived. I smiled, remembering another lesson from our father. In finance, appearance matters. Thanks, Margaret. Is everything else prepared? She nodded, understanding the real question. For 6 months, she'd helped me gather evidence, coordinate with investigators, and maintain the illusion of compliance with Michael's new regime. All the documents are backed up and secured. External drives delivered to 3 different law firms. After she left, Diana asked quietly, "Are you sure about this?" Once it starts, he stole from our clients, Diana. Used their trust to enrich himself. What would you do if someone stole from your family? The night of the gala arrived clear and cold. The Hamilton estate, a sprawling mansion overlooking the Atlantic, glowed with warmth and old money confidence. Rolls-Royces and Mercedes deposited Boston's financial elite at the entrance. I arrived early, wearing a classic black evening gown that had been my mother's favorite. Michael was already there, commanding attention in the center of the grand ballroom. "Ah, there's my sister," he called out too loudly. "The last of the old guard, aren't you, Lex? But change is good, isn't it? Progress is inevitable." I smiled, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter. "Indeed it is, brother." Elizabeth Hamilton approached, elegant in her 70s. Her family had trusted the Sullivans with their wealth for 3 generations. "Alexander dear, so glad you could make it. Though I hear rumors this might be your last gala with the firm." "Changes are coming," Michael interrupted smoothly. "Big announcements tonight. The future of wealth management is evolving." Elizabeth's eyes met mine briefly. She knew. The Hamilton family hadn't maintained their fortune for 2 centuries by being naive about money. The ballroom filled quickly. I recognized faces from regulatory agencies, banking executives, journalists from the financial press. At exactly 8 o'clock, Michael took the stage, radiating confidence. Distinguished guests, valued clients, welcome to the 50th Annual Hamilton Investment Gala. Tonight is about more than celebration. It's about the future. I'm proud to announce that Sullivan Wealth Management is entering a new era. I moved quietly through the crowd, positioning myself near the main exit. Diana stood ready with her laptop, connected to the ballroom's presentation system. Merger with Platinum Capital Partners, creating one of the largest wealth management firms in New England. The crowd murmured appreciatively. Michael was in his element, promising growth, innovation, modernization. Then he turned to me, his smile sharp. And with this transition comes another announcement. My sister Alexandra, after careful consideration, has decided to retire. Her old-fashioned methods, while admirable, are no longer suited to modern finance. Actually, I said clearly, my voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room, I have an announcement of my own. Michael's smile flickered. Lex, this isn't the time. Oh, but it is? I nodded to Diana, who connected her laptop to the display screens. Let's talk about modern finance, brother. Specifically, let's discuss the $47.3 million you've diverted from client accounts over the past 18 months. The screens filled with transaction records, bank transfers, shell company documentation. Michael's face went pale. These are false accusations. Ms. Sullivan, a grave voice interrupted. Harold Winters, head of the SEC's Boston office, stood up. Are these the records you submitted to our office? Yes, sir, along with the forensic accountant's report detailing exactly how my brother used our trading platform to mask unauthorized transfers through a network of Cayman Island accounts. The room erupted in chaos. Elizabeth Hamilton's voice cut through the noise. Michael Sullivan, are you saying you stole from my family? No, I was investing aggressively, pursuing higher returns. Through unlicensed offshore vehicles, another regulator stood, without disclosure or client authorization. I watched as Michael's carefully constructed world crumbled. SEC agents moved to block the exits. Diana distributed copies of the forensic report to key regulators. The federal investigation has been ongoing for months, I announced to the stunned crowd. Every transaction documented, every shell company traced. The evidence has been preserved, despite recent attempts to modernize our record-keeping system. Michael lunged for me, his composure shattered. You planned this. You betrayed your own brother. Security officers grabbed him before he reached me. I stepped closer, keeping my voice low. No, Michael. You betrayed our family's legacy. You betrayed our client's trust. I just exposed it. The next few hours were a blur of statements, documents, and arrests. Michael was led out in handcuffs, still protesting that he'd done nothing wrong. The merger announcement became a very different kind of press story. Later that night, I stood in our father's old office, now mine again by emergency board vote. Elizabeth Hamilton sat across from me, examining account statements. Your father would be proud, she said finally. He always said the true measure of a financial advisor isn't how much money they make, but how well they protect it. Even from family? I asked softly. Especially from family. She stood, straightening her elegant jacket. The Hamilton assets will stay with Sullivan Wealth Management, dear. Under your management only. Over the next few months, the full story emerged. Michael had started small, skimming from larger accounts, masking the losses with falsified returns. Success made him bolder, greedier. The merger was his exit strategy, a way to hide his fraud in the chaos of consolidation. The SEC investigation revealed everything. Michael faced federal charges for securities fraud, money laundering, and criminal conspiracy. Most of the stolen funds were recovered from his offshore accounts. I rebuilt Sullivan Wealth Management on our grandfather's original principles: trust, transparency, and genuine client service. We lost some accounts in the scandal, but gained others who appreciated our commitment to ethical practices. 1 year later, I received a letter from Michael, written from federal prison. "You could have warned me, Lex, given your own brother a chance to make it right." I wrote back one line: "I gave you the same chance you gave our clients." None. These days, Sullivan Wealth Management has a new compliance system. Every transaction is triple-checked, every investment vehicle thoroughly vetted. The Hamilton family still holds their annual gala, though it's a bit more subdued now. My father's portrait hangs in my office, next to our grandfather's original license. Sometimes, late at night, I look at them and remember what this business is really about. Not just managing money, but managing trust. As for Michael, he's serving 15 years in federal prison. Plenty of time to think about the true cost of betraying trust. The merger he planned never happened, but a different kind of change did. A return to the principles that built our firm. Last week, a young analyst noticed some unusual trading patterns in a client's account. Instead of dismissing her concerns, I spent 3 hours reviewing the transactions with her. They turned out to be legitimate, but I gave her a bonus anyway. For being diligent, I told her, in this business, trust is everything, and trust requires vigilance. She asked me later if it was hard, exposing my own brother's crimes. I thought about Michael's face at the gala, about our father's last words about trust, about 3 generations of Sullivan integrity. The hardest decisions, I said, are often the clearest ones. Now, when clients visit our offices, they still see the Sullivan name on the door. But underneath, there's a new phrase carved in small, elegant letters: trust, earned and protected since 1962. Because in the end, that's what this story is really about. Not just money, not just family, but the fundamental trust that makes the financial world work. Michael forgot that. I never will. 3 generations of the Sullivan family had managed other people's money. My grandfather started our firm in 1962 with nothing but a desk, a telephone, and an unshakable belief in ethical investment practices. My father expanded it into Sullivan Wealth Management, serving some of Boston's most prestigious families. Then came my brother Michael and me, the twins who were supposed to carry the legacy forward together. Funny how together can mean such different things to different people. My name is Alexandra Sullivan, and until 6 months ago, I was the Chief Investment Officer of Sullivan Wealth Management, responsible for over $800 million in client assets. Now, according to my brother, I'm a disgraced former employee who mismanaged everything. The truth, as our clients are about to discover, is considerably more interesting. Miss Sullivan? My assistant Margaret's voice crackled through the intercom. The forensic accountant's report just arrived. I checked my watch. 7:15 a.m. Another early morning in the office, a habit I'd maintained even after Michael's attempted coup. Send him in. James Patterson from Deloitte had the careful demeanor of someone who'd spent decades uncovering financial fraud. He placed a thick folder on my desk. "You were right, Miss Sullivan. The irregularities started exactly 18 months ago. I opened the folder, though I already knew what I'd find. 18 months ago, right when Michael had insisted on modernizing our trading platform. Right when he'd started pushing for more aggressive investment strategies. "Show me the money flows," I said. Patterson pulled out a series of charts. "It's clever. I'll give him that. Small amounts, carefully distributed through a network of shell companies. Most auditors would miss it. But when you know what to look for." I studied the diagrams. Remember, they say simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. In the world of app design, that's doubly true. But try telling that to someone who mistakes complexity for innovation. I learned this lesson the hard way at Summit Design Labs, watching 5 years of groundbreaking work get dismissed as basic by someone who couldn't tell a wireframe from a window display. My name is Alexandra Mitchell, and I've spent the last decade perfecting the art of invisible design. Interfaces so intuitive that users forget they're interacting with technology at all. It's the hardest kind of design to create, and the easiest to dismiss if you don't understand what you're looking at. "This can't be it," Jackson Porter said, scrolling through my presentation with increasingly visible disappointment. "Where's the innovation? The disruption? This looks like any other banking app." I watched my business partner of 5 years dismiss 18 months of revolutionary work with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never actually built anything himself. Jackson had joined Summit Design Labs in our 2nd year, bringing connections and capital we desperately needed at the time. He was good at one thing: convincing wealthy clients that we were the next big thing in tech design. "That's the point, Jackson," I explained, zooming in on the interface layers. "The innovation is in how it works, not how it looks." "The adaptive learning system looks basic," he interrupted, pushing back from the conference table. "Global Bank is expecting something revolutionary. They're not paying us $2 million for this." He gestured dismissively at my screens. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that Jackson's opinion didn't matter. Tomorrow's presentation to Global Bank's executive team would show them exactly how revolutionary the design was. The adaptive interface I'd created would change how people thought about banking, making complex financial transactions as intuitive as sending a text message. "You haven't even tested it," I said, pulling up the prototype. "Let me show you how the emotional response tracking works." "Alex," Jackson cut in, using the condescending tone he perfected over the years, "I know you're proud of this, but we need something that pops. Something that shows Global Bank they're getting their money's worth. All this invisible innovation doesn't sell." I looked around our sleek office, remembering when it was just a cramped co-working space where I'd first sketched out my vision for truly intuitive design. Summit Design Labs had grown on the strength of my work, but lately, Jackson had been pushing for more flash, less function, more sizzle, less steak. "The prototype testing shows." "Testing," Jackson scoffed. "Real innovators don't wait for testing. They disrupt. They revolutionize. This," he waved at my screens again, "this looks like something from a UX 101 class." That stung. I'd spent years developing the psychological principles behind my adaptive interfaces. The Global Bank app wasn't just a design. It was the culmination of everything I'd learned about how humans interact with technology. "Jackson, the simplicity is deliberate. The interface adapts to each user's behavioral patterns, learning." "Save the technical details," he interrupted, standing up. "I've got another meeting. We'll talk about this tomorrow before the Global Bank presentation." He strode out, leaving me alone with my supposedly basic design. I turned back to my screens, checking the time. 16 hours until the presentation. Plenty of time for Jackson to come around once he actually saw the interface in action. I worked late into the night, refining the demonstration, making sure every interaction was perfect. The adaptive learning system was my masterpiece, an interface that would actually understand its users, anticipating their needs before they even realized them. At midnight, the cleaning crew found me still at my desk. "Working late again, Miss Mitchell?" Maria asked, emptying my trash can. "Big presentation tomorrow," I smiled, rubbing my eyes. "Have to make sure everything's perfect." "Like always," she nodded. "Mr. Porter left hours ago. Said something about a dinner with clients." I nodded, used to Jackson's networking sessions at expensive restaurants. Let him wine and dine. I had real work to do. It wasn't until I finally headed home at 2 a.m. that I noticed something odd. Jackson's laptop was still on his desk, glowing softly in the dark office. He never left without it. Curious, I glanced at the screen as I passed. What I saw made my blood run cold. There, in pristine high-resolution glory, was my interface design, but not the basic version Jackson had dismissed. This was my complete work, every innovation, every breakthrough, rebranded with a new company name, Porter Innovation Labs. My first thought was that I must be more tired than I realized. Jackson might be arrogant, but he couldn't. Then I saw the email drafts, the pitch deck, the incorporation papers. Porter Innovation Labs is proud to present a revolutionary new approach to financial technology. My hands shook as I scrolled through document after document. Jackson hadn't just stolen my design. He'd been planning this for months. The basic dismissal was just his cover, buying time while he prepared to launch my work as his own. And the client dinner he was at tonight? According to his calendar, it was with Global Bank's CEO. I sank into Jackson's ergonomic chair, my mind racing. 5 years of partnership, reduced to this. All those late nights, all that innovation, all that careful refinement. Jackson thought he could just take it all with a few keystrokes and a new logo. But he'd made one crucial mistake. He thought he understood my design. The interface I'd created wasn't just a pretty collection of screens and buttons. It was a living system, built on thousands of hours of behavioral research and psychological insight. Jackson had stolen the blueprint, but he didn't understand the architecture. And tomorrow, in front of Global Bank's entire executive team, that lack of understanding would become painfully clear. I pulled out my phone, checking the time. 14 hours until the presentation. Just enough time to make a few small adjustments to the demonstration version. Things that only someone who truly understood the system would notice. Jackson thought my design was basic. Tomorrow, he'd learn just how sophisticated basic could be. As I worked through the night, making subtle changes to the demonstration code, I thought about all the times Jackson had taken credit for my innovations, all the times he dismissed my work as basic or uninspired in private, only to praise it to clients once he figured out how to claim it as his own. This time would be different. By the time I left the office at 4 a.m., everything was ready. The interface looked exactly the same, deceptively simple, elegantly basic. But now, it contained a few special features that would only activate when someone tried to present it without understanding its true complexity. I drove home in the pre-dawn darkness, a small smile playing on my lips. In a few hours, Jackson would learn the hard way that there's nothing basic about true innovation. Sometimes the most sophisticated systems are the ones that look simplest on the surface. And sometimes the best way to prove your worth is to let others try to steal it. Tomorrow's presentation was going to be very interesting indeed. The morning of the Global Bank presentation dawned bright and clear. I arrived at their gleaming headquarters 2 hours early, watching their employees stream into the building, each one a potential user of my interface. Each one about to witness exactly what happens when someone tries to take credit for innovation they don't understand. Jackson strutted in at 8:45, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His presentation folder was emblazoned with the Porter Innovation Labs logo, my designs rebranded under his name. Alex. He looked surprised to see me in the Global Bank lobby. What are you doing here? Supporting my partner, I smiled. Big day for Summit Design Labs, right? His expression flickered. About that, there's been a change of plans. The presentation will be under my new venture. It's better for everyone this way. More innovative. More innovative than Summit Design Labs? I kept my voice casual. The company we built together. Look, Alex. He lowered his voice, glancing around the lobby. Your work is good, solid. But Global Bank needs something more cutting edge. Porter Innovation Labs represents the future of interface design. I nodded thoughtfully. And this sudden change wouldn't have anything to do with the complete project files I saw on your laptop last night. His face hardened. You went through my computer. You left it open. Right next to the incorporation papers for your new company, featuring my interface design. Your basic design, he corrected, straightening his Italian silk tie, which I've significantly improved. Listen, I'll make this easy. Walk away now, and I'll give you a generous settlement. Try to fight this, and my lawyers will bury you. Before I could respond, a tall woman in an impeccable suit approached us. Mr. Porter? I'm Catherine Walsh, Global Bank's Chief Innovation Officer. We're ready for you in the main boardroom. Jackson's practiced smile returned instantly. Wonderful. This is Alexandra Mitchell, one of our former designers. She was just leaving. I smiled warmly at Catherine. Actually, I'd love to see the presentation, if that's all right. I'm quite interested in innovative interface design. Catherine looked between us, clearly sensing tension. Of course, the more technical expertise in the room, the better. Shall we? The Global Bank boardroom was impressive. Wall-to-wall windows overlooking the city, state-of-the-art presentation screens, and a table long enough to seat the 20 executives gathered for the demonstration. Jackson took his place at the head of the table, exuding confidence. I sat quietly in the back, opening my laptop to monitor what was about to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, Jackson began, banking interface design hasn't changed significantly in a decade. Today, Porter Innovation Labs will show you the future of financial technology. I watched as he pulled up the first screens of my interface. Even rebranded with his company's logo, the design was unmistakably mine. Clean, intuitive, deceptively simple. What you're looking at, Jackson continued, is a revolutionary adaptive interface that learns from user behavior. Every interaction reshapes the system, creating a uniquely personalized experience. The executives leaned forward, interested. Jackson clicked through the demonstration screens, describing features he barely understood. I waited patiently, knowing what was coming. Let me show you how it works, he said, reaching the interactive portion of the demonstration. Imagine a typical banking customer trying to set up a complex investment portfolio. He tapped the screen, and that's when the interface began its real demonstration. The first change was subtle. Menu items shifting slightly, buttons responding a fraction of a second slower than they should. Jackson faltered momentarily. but pushed on. The system learns from each user's patterns, he continued, tapping through to the investment section. It adapts to their. Wait. The interface had started anticipating his actions, but not in the way he expected. Buttons moved just as he reached for them. Drop-down menus expanded in the wrong directions. Text shifted between languages. Small technical issue, he said, his forehead beginning to shine with sweat. The beauty of this system is its. The interface interrupted him with a helpful pop-up. It seems you're having trouble navigating basic functions. Would you like to return to the tutorial? Nervous laughter rippled through the boardroom. Jackson jabbed at the screen, trying to dismiss the message, but each tap only brought up more helpful suggestions. User appears confused. Activating beginner mode. Error. Unable to detect basic understanding of interface principles. Warning. Unauthorized presentation attempt detected. Catherine Walsh leaned forward. Mr. Porter, is the system suggesting you don't know how to use your own interface? It's a minor glitch, Jackson said quickly, his voice rising. The innovative nature of the design sometimes exposes when someone doesn't understand it. I suggested from the back of the room. May I? Before Jackson could object, I walked to the front and tapped the screen once. The interface immediately calmed, returning to its elegant, intuitive state. What you're seeing, I explained to the now very interested executives, is actually a sophisticated security system built into the interface itself. It recognizes not just what users do, but how they do it. Pattern recognition at the behavioral level. And it recognized that Mr. Porter doesn't understand his own system. Catherine asked, her eyes sharp. Not his system, I corrected gently. Mine. This interface was designed and developed by Summit Design Labs, specifically by me. Mr. Porter here thought it looked basic enough to steal. He didn't realize that looking basic was the point. I pulled up the real demonstration screens, showing the layers of complexity hidden beneath the simple surface. The behavioral learning algorithms, the adaptive security protocols, the psychological response patterns. Every element serves a purpose, I continued. The interface learns from each user, building a unique behavioral profile. When someone tries to present it without understanding those principles, I gestured at the screen, where Jackson's increasingly frantic taps were being met with more helpful suggestions about taking basic design courses. It knows, Catherine finished, a smile playing at her lips. Fascinating. And this security feature is built into the interface itself. It's not just a security feature, I explained. It's a fundamental part of how the system learns and adapts. The same algorithms that make it incredibly user-friendly also make it incredibly good at detecting who truly understands its architecture. Jackson had given up on the demonstration and was now standing awkwardly to the side, his perfect suit no longer looking quite so perfect. This is ridiculous, he sputtered. I have documentation proving this is my design. Porter Innovation Labs. Doesn't exist. I cut in smoothly. At least, not legally. You left the incorporation papers up on your screen last night, Jackson. They weren't filed yet, just like you hadn't actually quit Summit Design Labs or transferred any intellectual property rights. Catherine Walsh stood up. I think we've seen enough. Ms. Mitchell, Global Bank is very interested in this interface. The real one, designed by Summit Design Labs. Perhaps we could continue this discussion without unnecessary complications. She glanced meaningfully at Jackson, who had the look of a man watching his billion-dollar dreams evaporate. Of course, I smiled. Though you should know the real interface is even more sophisticated than what you've seen. This was just the basic demonstration. The meeting concluded quickly after that. Security escorted Jackson out, while Global Bank's legal team began drafting preliminary agreements with Summit Design Labs, minus one former partner. Later that evening, as I sat in my office reviewing Global Bank's offer, significantly larger than the original $2 million, I received an email from Catherine Walsh. Your basic interface just revolutionized how we think about banking security. Sometimes the most sophisticated innovations are the ones that appear simplest on the surface. Looking forward to a long and innovative partnership. I smiled, thinking about all the times Jackson had dismissed my work as too basic, too simple, too uninspired. He never understood that true innovation isn't about flashy features or complex displays. It's about understanding human behavior deeply enough to make complex things appear simple. The lawsuit Jackson tried to file was dismissed quickly. Turns out, it's hard to claim ownership of something when the thing itself can prove you don't understand it. His reputation in the tech world was effectively over. No one wants to work with a designer who can't use his own interface. Summit Design Labs flourished after his departure. The Global Bank contract led to others, each one drawn to the idea of interfaces that could actually understand their users. We expanded, hired more designers, and I made sure each one understood our core principle: simplicity is sophisticated. A year later, I ran into Jackson at a tech conference. He was working for a small app development company, learning interface design from the ground up. When he saw me, he actually looked embarrassed. I never really understood it, did I? He said quietly. How much work goes into making something look simple? That's why it looked basic to you, I replied. You saw the surface, not the architecture. He nodded, then asked the question I could see had been bothering him. How did you know I tried to steal it? How did you know to build in that security feature? I smiled. I didn't build it to catch thieves, Jackson. I built it to understand users. It just happens that understanding users makes it very good at spotting people who don't understand it themselves. As I walked away, I thought about how fitting it was. In trying to steal what he thought was a basic interface, Jackson had proven exactly how sophisticated it really was. Now, when clients call my work basic or simple, I take it as the highest compliment. Because making something complex appear simple, that's the most sophisticated design of all. The interface that Jackson dismissed as too basic is now the industry standard for financial technology. Global Bank's user satisfaction rates hit record highs, and other banks are scrambling to license our technology. But more importantly, every designer at Summit Design Labs understands what Jackson never did. True innovation isn't about making things look complicated. It's about making complicated things look simple. And sometimes the best way to protect your innovation isn't with patents or lawyers. It's by making something so sophisticated that it can protect itself. Every morning, when I walk into our expanded offices, I pass by our company motto, now etched in glass. Sophistication lies in simplicity. It's a reminder that the best designs, like the best revenge, don't need to shout to make their point. They just need to work exactly as designed. They say simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. In the world of app design, that's doubly true. But try telling that to someone who mistakes complexity for innovation. I learned this lesson the hard way at Summit Design Labs, watching 5 years of groundbreaking work get dismissed as basic by someone who couldn't tell a wireframe from a window display. My name is Alexandra Mitchell, and I've spent the last decade perfecting the art of invisible design. Interfaces so intuitive that users forget they're interacting with technology at all. It's the hardest kind of design to create, and the easiest to dismiss if you don't understand what you're looking at. "This can't be it," Jackson Porter said, scrolling through my presentation with increasingly visible disappointment. "Where's the innovation? The disruption? This looks like any other banking app." I watched my business partner of 5 years dismiss 18 months of revolutionary work with the casual arrogance of someone who'd never actually built anything himself. Jackson had joined Summit Design Labs in our second year, bringing connections and capital we desperately needed at the time. He was good at one thing: convincing wealthy clients that we were the next big thing in tech design. "That's the point, Jackson," I explained, zooming in on the interface layers. "The innovation isn't how it works,